Oh, hey there. Welcome to Cardboard Brewing Company. You're looking for some underrated cards for your next Commander deck, yeah? I've got a few here that are kind of spicy that I think you'll like. This card was released in the Lost Caverns of Ixalan, also the set that has the best full art lands, by the way. But when I saw this card get dropped, I thought this was going to be the next big green mana rock staple card. It has a really interesting stat line. It's a 2-mana 1/1, which is not that big of a deal. And it taps for any color, which is a big deal. That's hard to find on mana rock sometimes. In Commander, it's a little bit easier because your colors are kind of determined by the commander that you're playing. But finding a 2-mana rock that taps for any color is really awesome. In addition, Poison Dart Frog has reach, which doesn't matter a whole lot, but let me compare this card to a favorite in Commander, the Ornithopter of Paradise. The Ornithopter of Paradise is a 2-mana 0/2 with flying, and it taps for any color. Like I said, very important. And when we put these two cards side by side and we compare the difference between the two, the biggest difference is that Poison Dart Frog has green in its mana pool, and Ornithopter Paradise can go in any deck. But other than that, the cards are really similar. They both can block flyers. They both tap for any color. They're both 2 mana. And the Poison Dart Frog has an edge here where you can put 2 mana into it to give the Poison Dart Frog Death Touch. So now you have a creature that can detour attackers, which matters a lot. There are many games I've played where if I just have a Death Toucher sitting on my board, people aren't willing to attack me with hardly anything at all because they don't want to lose their thing. Now, keeping 2 mana up to give this thing Death Touch is kind of a big deal, especially in the early game. You're going to be tapping this for mana instead. But when you're playing a deck that runs a lot of instants, like Simic decks, blue-green decks, and you've got counter spells up or flash speed stuff, that 2 mana is not that big of a deal. If you hold up the Poison Dart Frog as a blocker and block a creature and tap it for a mana plus 1 of any other color, any other land, now you've got Death Touch on the blocker. That's pretty good. It's pretty nice to be able to have that available at any point. And if people don't attack you because they might get Death Touched, well, then you just use that 2 mana to cast whatever instant speed thing you were going to do anyways. So I really like Poison Dart Frog. There's a lot of really good mana rocks in green already, so it's kind of hard to figure out like what the best ones. Obviously, 1 mana ones are better. Your Llanowar Elves, your Arbor Elves, stuff like that. But when you're looking at that 2 mana slot, consider Poison Dart Frog. Well, there's my first pick, but I don't think you've seen this one used in many decks very much. The Ninja of the Deep Hours is a card that I ran in a Ninja deck originally. Obviously, it has ninjutsu, and so you want to run it in a Ninja deck. But I've started running this card in every single blue deck of mine. It's just a really good surprise attacker. It's a 4-mana 2/2, which sucks. It's really bad. When it hits a player for combat damage, you get to draw a card. That's pretty good. But for 4 mana, it's not. But that ninjutsu keyword is really awesome. It's 2 mana for ninjutsu, and you get to bounce an unblocked attacker back to your hand and put this guy in, and it's like it has haste. You just get to hit, and then you get to draw a card. The thing you have to think about with Ninja of the Deep Hours is when does it start to pay itself off, right? It's a 2-mana 2/2 at best, and then it draws you a card if you hit a player for damage, which isn't that hard if you're playing the 2-mana part, right? Because it's an unblocked attacker. So if you have a 2-mana 2/2 that draws you a card, it's already replaced itself. If you get to hit a player again and you get to draw another card, then a 2-mana 2/2 that's draw you 2 cards is insane. There's another really popular creature that when it enters the battlefield, it draws you 2 cards, but it costs you 3 mana, and you have to sack it right away. It's called the Muldrifter. That card was like all over Commander when I started playing originally, and that card was nuts. Now, it's nuts for different reasons because it sacks itself, which matters for a lot of decks that are trying to do sacrifice stuff. But you don't get to keep the creature. It's just a 3-mana 2/2, and you're guaranteed to get the 2 cards, yes, but Ninja of the Deep Hours, you're guaranteed, quote-unquote, to get 1 card off of it for sure at a 1-mana discount. And it's not that hard to hit a player a second time with the Ninja of the Deep Hours. There's players that aren't going to block nothing. And there's a lot of players that don't play blockers. They don't have creatures out. Hitting a player that doesn't have any blockers is not that hard in Commander until you're into the really late game. And then we have to look at the other side. Well, what is Ninja of the Deep Hours good for in the late game? Well, the nice thing about Ninja of the Deep Hours is that it has ninjutsu. And so if you attack a player with a different creature that goes unblocked and it has a really good enter the battlefield effect, you can now just swap places, put the Ninja of the Deep Hours into play, draw your card, and then you've got that ETB creature in your hand ready to play again to get another sick ETB. The cards I like to do this the most, especially like mid-game, is like Wood Elves. Using Wood Elves to get a land and then attack somebody for 1, and then you just blink it out with Ninja of the Deep Hours to play Wood Elves again. That's amazing. And that's a low power play at 3 mana. You look at some bigger cards that have some really awesome enter the battlefield effects. Ninja of the Deep Hour is a really cheap way for you to get some kind of interesting blink, as well as replace itself when it hits a player for damage. I really like Ninja of the Deep Hours. I think it has a lot of value, and at its very, very worst, you have a 4-mana blocker. And that's maybe pretty bad. But late game, if you can't blink an ETB creature and you can't get your draw effect, at least you have a 2/2 sitting there ready to take the hit from somebody's 2020 commander. All right, my next spicy card here that's a little bit underrated is Scroll of Fate. And I'm actually kind of shocked by the stats on this card. I think this card mostly slept on, though. I think people just don't understand the rules of Morph that well, and so they don't use it very much. Scroll of Fate is a 3-mana artifact that you tap and you manifest a card from your hand, which means you're going to take a card, you're just going to play it on the table face down. And when it's face down, it's a 2/2 creature. It works just like a 2/2 creature. It attacks and blocks for 2 damage. It doesn't have a color. It's colorless. But it can sit there and do nothing, or you can attack with it. But it has Morph. And the Morph cost is whatever the cost of the card, the face-up side of the card is, if it's a creature. So at its ideal use, Scroll of Fate lets you take a creature, put it on the battlefield face down, and then you pay that creature's mana cost, which you were going to do anyways to cast it, to turn it face up. And when you turn it face up, it has the stats and abilities of the cards that are face up. With, it will not do enter the battlefield effect. So that's one downside to manifesting a card, is if you're playing any creature that say, when this creature enters, it does not do that. But if you're playing any other creature that doesn't say that, you just have that creature, and you were going to pay that mana cost for that creature anyways to put it into play. Here's why Scroll of Fate is really good, though. When you tap Scroll of Fate and you play a creature down, it does not count as casting. So you can't get counterspelled. That big dumb creature, the 3-mana 8/8 or whatever you have, does not get counterspelled. And so you just get to play it face down. No one knows what it is. And whenever you feel like it, literally at any time, it's instant speed, but better. You can't respond to the morph. And so if you pay a morph cost, no players can do anything about you morphing that creature. It just flips up. And so if you have a 3-mana 8/8 sitting there, you just pay 3 mana to flip it over. And now you have an 8/8 blocker or an 8/8 attacker out of nowhere, right? And it didn't get counterspelled, which is awesome. Another really cool benefit about Scroll of Fate is that when you manifest that card, you give that creature flash, essentially, right? You can play it at instant speed. You can tap that artifact whenever you want. And so if somebody attacks you with their 5/5 commander and you tap Scroll of Fate and put your face down 3-mana 8/8 into play and block, then you can pay your 3 mana and flip it up, and now you got an 8/8. It has flash. It couldn't get countered, and you got to block something. That's incredible. That's so good. It's so good. It's really, really good. Now, it's not really, really good if you're not playing creatures in your deck, right? It gets a lot worse when you can't flip that card back up. But having this card in a deck without creatures isn't that bad. It's not great. I would probably cut it, but it's not that bad because having access to a creature that's a 2/2 at flash speed so you can block attackers isn't bad. It's any card in your hand becomes a 2/2 flash creature that can block. That's pretty great. And sometimes later on, you're like, you just need an attacker. Well, now you've got a 2/2 that has haste, right? Because you just flashed it on the end step of the person before your turn, and then on your turn, now it's your upkeep, and you can attack with it. That's not that bad. That's at its very minimum. You just make 2/2s for free out of your hand from any card. But you can also flicker them, right? Exile them, return to the battlefield, and they return face up, which means you can manifest lands out of your hand as 2/2s, and then find a way to flicker them, right? If you're in a flicker style deck like Conjurer's Claws and stuff like that. And when you flicker that 2/2 morph creature back up, it's a land, and it enters play as a land, and you just ramped yourself for free. That's so cool. That's so awesome. So I think Scroll of Fate is really, really good. I think it's underplayed because I think morph is not fully understood. I think that you ought to give it a try, especially if you're in a meta with your play pod of having a lot of counter spells or people who are very aggressive and like to attack you. Scroll of Fate is another attacker deter because you get to just play cards as blockers. And it could be any card. It could be that instant that you can't do anything with. It's just garbage in this game. We'll just throw it out there as a 2/2, and now that card gained you a bunch of life for free. Maybe it kills a 1/1 out of nowhere. I mean, that's pretty good. And once you start putting blink effects in, like I've got a whole deck I'm working on right now that's a morph deck, but the goal isn't to play morph creatures. The goal is to play lands as morph creatures and then flicker them and ramp a ton. If you want to hear more about that deck, let me know in the comments, okay? But I'm pumped to do that, and Scroll of Fate is going to be a superstar in that deck. All right, this card might be my favorite card on this list. I think it's really, really powerful and underused. The Cathar Commando is a 2-mana 3/1 with flash that also says you can pay 1 colorless mana, and then you could destroy an artifact or enchantment. And I think this card is so underplayed. It's really, really good because we have Reclamation Sage, which is a 3 mana 2/1 that when it enters the battlefield, you get to destroy an artifact or enchantment. Now, the difference between these two cards, if you look at them at face value, the Cathar Commando is a 2 mana 3/1 with flash, right? And you have to pay that extra mana, which now makes it 3 mana, to destroy the artifact or enchantment. Whereas Rec Sage is a 3 mana 2/1 that destroys the artifact or enchantment, but you get to keep the 2/1, right? And the biggest difference is that Rec Sage is an elf, and that's a very, very big creature type in Commander because elves are very highly played and very good. So Rec Sage is still very good. Don't hear me wrong there. Rec Sage is awesome. But Cathar Commando also has a relevant creature type. Humans are a massive creature type in Magic. There are so many humans, especially recently with all of these Universes Beyond sets that we have coming out. There's so many humans that exist in Commander now that maybe weren't as good in the past, but are now very, very good. The Final Fantasy sets, there's so many good humans. Cathar Commando fits in a lot of decks, and it's a relevant creature type in a relevant color. White and humans go together really well. You have a 2 mana 3/1 at its worst, right? If you don't flash it in and you just play it on curve, it's a 2 mana 3/1. Which also has removal tied to it, because you could pay 1 at any time and just sacrifice it and destroy an artifact enchantment you don't like. That's pretty sick. At its best, it's a 2 mana 3/1 that blocks a creature, and then before the Cathar Commando dies, you pay 1 mana and blow up an artifact or enchantment. So you got some life gain from the block, and you get to destroy an artifact or enchantment as well. And if you want the super crazy, ridiculous play, you either have a sacrifice effect that like triggers when you sacrifice something that goes off when you sacrifice the Cathar Commando, or this is really spicy. If anyone does this, let me know. If you can give Cathar Commando first strike as it enters with some effect, like it just has first strike when it enters. Now you've got a blocker that's a 3/1 with first strike. It kills the creature it blocked, and then you sack it before the regular damage goes off and blow up an artifact or enchantment as well. Now you've got a 2-for-1. And I think that's my dream play with the Cathar Commando someday. I need to make a deck just around Cathar Commando just to pull that off, to show it can be done. But that's like the nuts when you're thinking Cathar Commando. But I think a 2 mana 3/1 that also can pay an extra mana to destroy an artifact enchantment in white is really good. And having a blocker at flash speed is also really good. And that's one thing that Rec Sage is missing out on, is that you don't have flash on Rec Sage. And so what's better? What's better? They're both very good. They're both very good. And I think flash edges out most cards because you can play them anytime and blow up whatever you want to at any time. If Rec Sage was a human, then obviously Cathar Commando would be way better. But because it's an elf, I think that gives it the edge in green as well. So you decide how you want to. But if you like Rec Sage, you got to play Cathar Commando. It's essentially the same card, but maybe better. Unless you're playing a typal deck, then maybe you can talk about how the typal matters there too. All right, let's look at a really underrated card. This is a mythic rarity card that I never, ever see. And it's super cheap and never run, but I think it's actually really good. The card's called Hell Vault. It's a 3 mana artifact that has a couple interesting abilities. The first one is that you can pay 1 generic mana and tap it, and you can exile a creature you control under Hell Vault, which sounds really bad. The other ability is pay 7 mana and tap it, and you can exile any creature under Hell Vault, which also sounds really bad. And it might be worse than the first ability. But the reason why Hell Vault is on this list is because of the last ability, which says when Hell Vault is put in the graveyard from the battlefield, you return all cards exiled with it to the battlefield under their owner's control. So now Hell Vault becomes an insurance policy, which is kind of a goofy way of looking at it. But if you play Hell Vault at 3 mana and you let it sit there, and people go to remove your creatures, except your commander, don't do it to your commander. But if you have your creatures removed and you like them, and you're not running much graveyard recursion, which that might be your problem out the gate. If you're not running graveyard recursion, I think you should look at a few cards. There's a whole bunch of graveyard recursion in like every color. But if you're playing a deck that doesn't have graveyard recursion, which is not abnormal, I think you should consider Hell Vault, because your cards that go to the graveyard are basically gone forever anyways at that point, right? If you're not playing recursion. But Hell Vault gives you an extra use out of all the creatures that you exile with it. I mean, let's look at a card we already talked about. We look at Ninja of the Deep Hours, right? Ninja of the Deep Hours, you hit somebody for 2 damage. They're like, no, I don't want you to draw that card. And they kill your Ninja of the Deep Hours. You can respond by just paying 1 with Hell Vault and exiling Ninja of the Deep Hours, because you weren't getting that card back anyways, right? You're not running recursion. And it just sits under Hell Vault for the whole game, right? But out of nowhere, Somebody plays mass artifact destruction, right? They bane of progress the board, and every artifact dies. Well, at the very minimum, you get a Ninja the Deep Hours back, and that's if you only ever did that effect one time for the whole game. Having a 2/2 back that draws you a card after that's not bad. Didn't cost you that much. And you have to think about, if you do that every single turn, you just throw a creature in there every turn that's going to get removed, right? Or the board wipe happens, you pick your best one, you throw it in the Hell Vault, right? Or you go really crazy and you play any deck that destroys artifacts, right? Like you destroy your own artifacts and you just have a bunch of creatures thrown in Hell Vault that belong to you. And now you've got like some graveyard recursion, kind of, right? It's kind of janky, but it's really cheap. It costs you 1 mana to throw a creature in there. And how many creatures you got to get back for Hell Vault? Probably two. Just getting 1 creature back, unless it's like an 8 mana card, which at that point, I mean, you're getting so much mana back from Hell Vault. But if you throw 1 or 2 early game creatures in there that give you a little effect, that's not bad at all. It's actually really good. And if things go really crazy bad and you really need somebody's thing removed, you can pay 7 mana to remove somebody's like combo piece or whatever and put it in the Hell Vault. And the other thing about the Hell Vault is like you never have to destroy it. You can just use it as removal if you want to and pay 7 mana a turn to do that. I think that's a little bit too much mana to play as removal. But, you know, it's the holy crap button if you need it. If you really need it, it's there. I think that you should give Hell Vault a try, especially if you're running cards that blow up artifacts already in your deck. Like sometimes it's just really good to blow up your own and get a whole bunch of creatures back. And you're looking for cards that have like enter the battlefield effects. All of your little elves that get you a land when they enter the battlefield, throw them in a Hell Vault. Like block a creature with them and then throw them in the Hell Vault. Let them sit there, right? That's like so much value. Okay, here's a really big throwback card that I've gotten some good value with. It's called Dimir Doppelganger. It's a 3 mana 0/2, which is really bad. But the ability on the card is what makes it incredible. You can pay 3 mana, you exile target creature card from a graveyard, and the Dimir Doppelganger becomes a copy of that card and gains this ability, meaning you can turn it into another creature whenever you want to. Up to you. I think more people need to run more graveyard, like spot removal. At least this is coming from a player who plays a lot of cards from the graveyard. I love playing with my graveyard. Dimir Doppelganger isn't the best graveyard hate card, but it's good. You get to get rid of creatures in graveyards, and you get to clone them. You get to become that creature. And usually clone effects are sitting right around 4 mana to cast, where Dimir Doppelganger, you get a 1 mana discount on that, which is pretty sick. And you could do it multiple times. So at the very minimum, you just exile creatures out of graveyards for 3 mana when people are trying to get them back. And at the very maximum, somebody destroys a creature that was a problem on the board, and your Dimir Doppelganger now becomes a copy of it, and now your creature is the problem on the board. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. I think Dimir Doppelganger has a lot of competition, because a lot of times just like exiling the whole graveyard is a better option depending on what players are doing to the graveyard. But one of my favorite cards in Magic is Scavenging Ooze, and Dimir Doppelganger is not as good as Scavenging Ooze, because Ooze can hit anything in the graveyard for 1 green, but it really wants to eat creatures. That's what it's really looking to do. That's when it gets out of hand. Dimir Doppelganger is kind of like that. Like I said, there are better options if you just want straight spot removal. But if you want a really good clone effect in Commander that deals with graveyards as well, you can't miss with Dimir Doppelganger. It's pretty awesome. It's got a really good ability, especially if you're playing against decks that are kind of like the Battle Cruiser style decks. If there's players in your meta that are just running like high value beaters, you know, like the 4 mana 5/5s that draw you a card, something like that. Dimir Doppelganger is really good at those decks. So you just eat 1 creature a turn and you get all the value yourself. It's pretty great. I don't know how I don't see this card all the time. I think this might be one of the best white control cards that exists in the format. Unexpectedly Absent is a 2 mana instant that also has X tied to it. And whatever you pay for X is how many cards deep you put a target non-land permanent into their owner's library, right? So let's do just a little bit of numbers here. If I pay 4 mana, 2 for the 2 white pips, 2 for X, then I pick any non-land permanent and put it on their owner's library, 2 cards from the top. Like if that guy's Rhystic Study is really bothering me and I don't want him to see it for 2 turns, I pay the 4 mana plus 1 for the Rhystic Study, obviously. You have to do that. And you put the Rhystic Study 2 cards deep in that person's deck, and it's gone, right? And that's the card at its worst. At its absolute worst, you're paying more than 2 mana for this card to get rid of a problem for a little bit of time. But Unexpectedly Absent is incredible. It's so good, okay? Because in Commander, often, many players are searching their deck. Even if it's just for lands, it happens all the time. You search your deck for land, you put it on the battlefield. In response to any player searching their deck, if they have a card on the battlefield that's not a land that you don't like, you pay 2 mana and cast Unexpectedly Absent, and you put that card at the top of that player's deck. Then that Unexpectedly Absent is resolved. Now that player goes to search their deck for a card and put it on the battlefield tapped like a land, right? Or they put it in their hand. And the card that you hate is now in their deck somewhere because it just got shuffled in. Incredible. It's so good. It's the best kind of removal because outside of exile, which white has some exile, but it's pretty choosy, right? Mono white, you're looking at either it has to be a creature only with Swords to Plowshare, Path to Exile, right? Or like the creature has to be tapped or over 4 power or under 2 power, whatever. There's a whole bunch of modifiers on mono white control cards. And the exile's good, but like if you do anything other than exile, like destroy effects or temporary exile, that card's coming back. Whatever card you got rid of, the player that you got rid of it from is going to try to get it back because it was a problem. Unexpectedly Absent is awesome at just getting rid of a card. So much so, I think it's better than Chaos Warp. And Chaos Warp is a staple card. The main difference between Chaos Warp and Unexpectedly Absent is that Chaos Warp can hit lands. And so sometimes that guy has Gaia's Cradle and you're sick of it and you can get rid of it, right? Chaos Warp allows for permanents to enter for free. If you hit a permanent on the top of the card, that player just swaps out the permanent for another permanent. And I've seen games where that top card ends the game. Like, it's so good. It just ends the game. And you weren't intending for that card to hit the battlefield ever. Unexpectedly Absent hits everything but lands. So you're not getting rid of the Gaia's Cradle, sorry. But every other permanent, it's gone. It is in the deck, and it's really hard to find. And that might be the best kind of removal outside of straight exile. It's really, really good. If you're running any kind of commander control deck that has white in it, you got to get yourself Unexpectedly Absent. It's really awesome. It's surprisingly strong. And you can use it on yourself too, right? If you really need to save a creature that's really good and someone's going to exile it, you could just put it on top of your deck for 2 mana and then you draw it next turn, you're good to go. And even like I said, the worst situation is when you pay like 4 mana for this card. The next worst situation, which is also very good, is you just pay 2 mana to put some guy's Darksteel Colossus on top of their deck. And now their next draw is an 11 mana artifact, right? You just nerfed their draw and they have to spend a whole nother turn to cast the Darksteel if they're going to do it, you know? It's not that bad. It's not that bad. And at the best, it's when you do it in response to somebody shuffling their deck and you throw that card into their deck. It's pretty great. Give it a shot. Ramp is an important part of playing Commander, and sometimes it can be hard to find ramp in certain colors. But I've got a really spicy pick here that I think will make a big difference in ramp for your blue decks. Let's look at Dreamscape Artist, the 2-mana 1/1 Spell Shaper human card. And it has a really cool activated ability that says pay 3, tap it, and discard a card, and sacrifice a land. A massive cost. But when you do that, you can search your library for up to 2 basic land cards and put them on the battlefield, then shuffle your library. And for the keen-eyed, you may see that this Dreamscape Artist is literally casting the spell Hero, but instead of playing green mana for it, you're paying blue mana for it. And you don't have to have the card Hero in your hand to do it. You could use any card and it becomes Hero. Hero's already a pretty awesome card, and now you get Hero in blue decks as well, which is pretty nice, especially if you're not playing green already. The nice thing about Dreamscape Artist as well is that it's only a 2-mana card to put into play, and the effect is then just the cost of Hero. So you're not investing a lot of mana into this creature to get it onto the battlefield, and at the very minimum, you just get a 1/1 blocker. If you need it, if you pay 2 mana and you got to throw it in front of a creature to save a bunch of life, that's fine. But if not, then you can pay that 3 mana and go Hero, and that's pretty great. Mono blue is a little bit tougher to recur the lands that you throw out, but once you start putting blue in with other colors for commander decks, being able to get the lands out of your graveyard to throw them back on your battlefield and keep harrowing is a pretty powerful effect. I think you should definitely give Dreamscape Artist a look. I think it can fit into a lot more decks than you think it can. It's very cheap in terms of mana and dollars, and it makes for some really interesting ramp plays for your early plays. You got turn 2 Dreamscape, turn 3 Hero, and if you can use those 2 basic lands for another 2-drop, it's pretty decent. All right, we're going to go into one of my cards that I think it might be a pet card for me. I don't know. It's not actually my pet card, but I really like this card a lot. And if you're playing Voltron decks specifically, you got to run this card. It's called Assault Suit. It's a 4-mana equipment, which is a little bit spendy. It costs a lot. It has 3 to equip, which is also kind of spendy. That's where you lose people on Assault Suit because it costs a lot of mana to set up. But Assault Suit gives the equipped creature +2/+2. Pretty nice. Gives it haste, which is also very great. The creature can't attack you or planeswalkers you control and can't be sacrificed. And if that's all it said, it'd be pretty decent. It'd be decent, right? You have a way to give haste to a Voltron creature. It gets bigger, and people can't edict you, so that you have to sacrifice your creature. But it has another really awesome line of text, which says, at the beginning of each opponent's upkeep, you may have that player gain control of the equipped creature until end of turn, and if you do, untap it. And this allows you to get more commander damage on the board more often if your opponents are willing to attack with your Voltron creature. It's awesome. It's like having 2 combat steps, except you give your opponent the combat step instead. And they can't attack you, which is great, so you're not giving them another attacker. The key line of text about it can't be sacrificed matters here a lot, because a lot of times if you give creatures to an opponent, they just use one of their sacrifice effects to get rid of the creature you gave them, right? Which you don't want to happen, but Assault Suit prevents that, which is super nice. This is awesome in Commander games too, where either you're behind as the Voltron player, or you're in a ride or die moment with one other player because the other 2 players are going crazy. That now at least you give your creature to that player that you're buddied up with for a turn so that they can Voltron, and now you've got double damage on your Voltron card. And that's if it's just Assault Suit on its own, because imagine a creature that has double strike already that's Voltron, right? Or a whole bunch of buffs on it. It gets kind of crazy really fast. Not to mention if your opponent's putting anything on your Voltron creature as well to try to eliminate a threat at the table. Assault Suit has a lot of application for Voltron decks, obviously. One thing I really like about Assault Suit as well, though, is decks that let you do things with other players' decks. I'm thinking of the card Daxus of Veltus, which has a little history with me because I used Daxus of Veltus as a Voltron commander. I know, it's dumb. It's a 3-mana 2/2. Why would you ever Voltron a 2/2 creature? But when you Assault Suit Daxus of Veltus and you give every player the opportunity to exile the top card of that opponent's deck and cast cards for the deck, that's super fun. That's a really fun way to play Commander, is to give your effects to other players. And they can't do it to you, because they can't attack you. So Daxus of Veltus is what I love to put Assault Suit on, as well as any other Voltron deck. Obviously, there are some really fun effects to do with Assault Suit. It makes for some chaotic games in a really good way. Give it a shot. It's really fun. And for my last piece of underrated Magic cards that I think you should use is another white card. But this card has been in so many of my decks. I love this card. Cliffside Rescuer is a 2-mana 2/2, and it has Vigilance. So at the very minimum, you get to attack every turn and still have a blocker. That's pretty great. It also has a tap ability where you sacrifice the Cliffside Rescuer, and target permanent you control gains protection from each of your opponents until end of turn. Meaning that that permanent can't be blocked, targeted, dealt damage, enchanted, or equipped by anything controlled by your opponents. It's very powerful. It's very powerful for any deck that likes their commander, which is pretty much every commander deck. If you've got any deck that's doing something really crazy with like stupid good cards like Bolas of Citadel, and you don't want people to blow it up, then you just have a Cliffside Rescuer sitting there waiting to give it protection from all of your opponents, right? Or think of Krark Clan Ironworks, and you just need it to survive, right? And you just have Cliffside Rescuer just sitting there. It's cheap. It's 2 mana for a 2/2. It's always untapped unless you use some other tap ability from other cards to tap it, because it has Vigilance, so it's not going to tap to attack. You can always do damage with it if you want to. You can always have a blocker if you want to. And then whenever some opponent wants to take care of your big threat, you just have Cliffside Rescuer ready to give it protection from everything that those players control. That's huge. That's a really big deal. Protection's already really good. Protection from opponents is maybe the best kind of protection you can get in Commander. This card came out in Commander 2019, so it's been a few years, and it probably needs a reprint, honestly, because I think it's just a really good white bear that also gives you super protection, which is super nice. So give it a try. Hope it can save some of your really valuable permanents in a game at some point, too. Let me know how it goes. Well, I hope you enjoyed all the spicy picks that we had here today at the Cardboard Brewing Company. Thanks so much for watching it, and if you got any spicy picks of your own, make sure you leave them in the comments so we can all take a look at them. Have a great one.